I'm Lake Miller.
And I'm Hannah Brown. Welcome to Gem City Diversity, a podcast where we talk about diversity and inclusion in the Dayton area. We're from the National Conference for Community and Justice of Greater Dayton. We're NCCJ. NCCJ works in the Miami Valley to increase understanding around the topics of diversity and inclusion. In this episode, Lake sat down with Reverend Dr. Benjamin Speare-Hardy to discuss his role in the West Dayton Caravan of Churches. During the episode, they discuss community organizing, COVID, the work of the West Dayton Caravan of Churches, and more.
So I wanted to start today and see if you might be able to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
All right, I'm the Reverend Doctor, and I'm an Episcopal priest, but the Reverend Dr. Benjamin Speare-Hardy. I'm the rector of St. Margaret's Episcopal Church and the president of the West Dayton Caravan of Churches, some 27 congregations, ecumenical. This is my 21st year at St. Margaret's. I was about this high when I got here. and I came in 2000 and purchased the land we have now in 2001 and started construction in 2002 and moved here in 2003 of October. And so we have 61.7 acres of land. We run a farm, 28-acre farm with soybeans and corn. We rotate the crops. And we run summer programs for grades 4 through 8th, and now we have the pre-K through 3rd. We do arts and STEM and reading and math and social and emotional skills. So every summer we run those programs. During COVID, we did that virtually. We had, even though the numbers were smaller, we usually run about 180 or more children at 3 sites, but we had to cut back and streamline because of COVID, but still running those programs to meet the needs of others. We were during a tornado, you remember that, we became the epic center for relief, where people came here to get supplies, and we provided meals for families. We took vans into areas that we couldn't reach and handed food to people. And people came through here. We had the state, the city, the county, and everyone came here to strategize and to meet the needs of our community. So the church became open. We were not hit. We only lost one tree during the storm. So as God would have it, we became the epic center to make sure there was relief coming out of this church for the community.
Can I ask, so, after the tornadoes happened, I think this is a great example. After the tornadoes happened, kind of what happened in your mind, and as the West Dayton Caravan of Churches, like what was that thought process or conversation? How did that go to get from, this happened in our community, how can we be a community asset?
Yeah, I called a meeting of the pastors right after the tornado, and it was scheduled for that Thursday, I believe. And the word got out, and so the mayor of Trotwood asked if she could come and so forth. And that's where we started. And so we began to plan from here. And then it just it just spread out, and we had people bringing relief from as far as Cleveland to bring water supply. We worked with Kettering Health Network, and Premier brought stuff as well. And people just brought in supplies. The Episcopal Diocese of Southern Ohio, which we are part, sent funds to make sure we were able to get stuff to assist with the needs of people. And a lot of the caravan pastors brought their vans so we could load up, and thanks to Pastor Bilal Moman and Pastor Carlton Williams, who were by my side, driving vans back and forth and make sure, going out, just coming, and we provide over 6,500 hot meals to people. And Kettering Health Network provided, we have the cook at Kettering, and they will bring it over here, and working with Peter Bath at the time, who was there. And they brought chaplains along. So when we got in a van to go out to visit, to take relief to people. We could pray with them as well. We had a lot of chaplains with us. And we continued that for a long time. People came, I mean, the church became a store and people could come in and mothers could get baby diapers. We had our members were able to organize the entire parish hall. And so people could easily come in and get what they wanted in terms of relief, getting water and supplies and so forth. And later on, we got cleaning supplies that came in that people could get as well. And in the past, we still help people came for support all the way after the tornado, even though in some of the places when you travel, you feel it just happened. Some homes have been rebuilt and others are still torn up, and you see the devastation still. And then came the pandemic. After all of that, we have the mass shooting, and then we have the pandemic. And all of a sudden, we became the clinic because I started advocating to make sure we had vaccines for those in West Dayton, especially the African American community. And out of that, we began to brainstorm and to say, well, what is a good site? And public health said we need a good site to start to make sure, because they were going to put aside 20% of their vaccine to make sure African American population had vaccine. And St. Margaret's became the first site, and we had 11 weeks of vaccine from 80 plus to 70 plus, and then all the way to 65 plus. All came here for 2 shots for the vaccine. We opened up the church for that and began to help. And I began to make calls and information every week. I would sit at a computer and register people to get vaccine. We were on there daily getting people shots. And Kettering was posted at Grace United Methodist. And we had public health, Montgomery County was here. And it was people had quite an experience coming here and going through because of the professionalism of public health Montgomery County and how they treated people. And it was easy access because at St. Margaret's, we don't have it in steps at all. So you can come in, roll from the wheelchair from the parking lot into the building. And we have people to assist with wheelchairs for those who needed help. Came in, got the shots, went into the sanctuary, waited for their 15 or 30 minutes, and then sent them back out. And I got here at 6 a.m. every morning to make sure I open up to get the nurses in for them to set up, once to set up the clinic and to start rolling. And so did that for 11 weeks, yeah.
Wow. And what really stands out to me, particularly at the juncture that we are at right now with the pandemic, and we're recording this at the end of August, is a large limitation to the vaccine is misinformation spread. Yes. And what really stands out to me is, you're talking about not only were we advertising, hey, come and get these vaccines, but that you were actually making phone calls to people, right? And I have to imagine, were you running into some of those conversations where you were needing to talk about, here are the facts. This is a safe, effective vaccine. Yeah.
We were blessed to have our members, and also I was sending the information to the Caravan churches to make sure they got their members sign up to come here for vaccine. So everyone was on board working. We had our staff here calling people, registering them for vaccine. I was doing registrations myself to make sure that they got here to get the vaccine. And we have, and after here, as we started with 200 shots and it began to increase, until they got to the point where they couldn't house the clinic here anymore. They needed a larger space. So they moved the Bethesda Temple, and then later on they moved to the old Kroger of the Sugar Creek facility, so they could serve a larger population. But we still, advocated and fought for vaccine when we had access to vaccine. And I'm very frustrated and disappointed because the older folks came and got their shots. And when they dropped the age, the advocacy for vaccine dropped as well. People refused to take the shots. And so we did, working with public health, I was on with Dr. Patterson and Dr. Johnson. We got on live stream and try to encourage and ask, people could call in and ask questions we had physicians on to tell them, they need to encouraging them to get the vaccine. So we got on the air and tried to encourage folks to get the vaccine. I'm just disappointed that we only have 49% of Montgomery County now, at least have received the first shot, and 50 in the whole state. I mean, it doesn't make sense at all, but we're still going to continue to fight and encourage people to get the vaccine. So,
and I think it's really impactful to me, hearing from an outside perspective how your role as a religious leader has shifted so much to meet the needs of not only the community within your congregation, but really the larger community of West Dayton and beyond West Dayton as well. And saying, we talk through what does the community need after a mass shooting? What does the community need after a tornado? And now what can we do to come together to emerge safely out of the other side of, of a global pandemic?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Join us on September 28th for food trucks, live entertainment, and a celebration of our local humanitarians. Learn more and register for free at www.nccjgreaterdayton.org/dinner.
So, you've talked a lot about some work that the West Dayton Caravan of Churches has been doing. But for our listeners who maybe this is the first time that they've ever heard of the West Dayton Caravan of Churches, can you talk a little bit about what this is and where the West Dayton Caravan of Churches originated from?
It started with 4 churches long before my time, because I came in 2000. They were already in existence in the 90s, late 90s, with 4 churches. I became president after Reverend Dr. Earl Harris, who was the pastor of Greater Allen AME Church, was the convener at the time, and we began to grow. I was responsible. We have a foundation, a scholarship foundation that was housed here at St. Margaret's, and I was responsible to be the liaison to make sure kids got scholarships every year. And so what we would do is a caravan, because during Holy Week, the churches, we move from church to church. We have a different preacher, different choirs, and just have different programs and offices. So we move and we worship in the space of that congregation. So whether they're Baptist or Methodist or Catholic, we're in your space. And so we move during Holy Week from Palm Sunday to Monday, Thursday. And most of the Monday, Thursday services were held here. As in August, we did the foot washing over here. So they came into the Episcopal tradition. And then when I became president, I decided to incorporate the churches. So we are now a nonprofit. And about, I think 2015, we became a 501c3. So it's a West Dayton Caravan of Churches Incorporated. We've added several congregations since. We're now 27 congregations strong, and good ecumenical group. We used to meet pre-pandemic every second Monday for breakfast. We move it around in different churches for breakfast and have our meeting. But since the pandemic, we started every Friday. They should check in and make sure what was going on in all the churches and whether there was any need. And now we've gone to every second Friday. So hopefully when we get out of this, we'll go back to our breakfast meeting. But not only do we provide scholarship for students, we collaborate together and work in providing educational programs as well. And all of the churches are doing something different. So we support each congregation in their outreach and what they're doing for the community. So I often say that we are one church and 27 mission stations. So whatever you do, and we're there to support you and support each other, and to be very active in the community. And part of what we do is also to fight for justice. So justice is key to us, and it's part of our bylaws. Whenever there is injustice, we have to stand up and fight for it. So,
and what does that look like as the Dayton Caravan of Churches coming in and fighting for justice?
Well, we were the ones during the closure of the hospital, we fought against that and still protesting, still fighting against it. because we felt that we had a community that was being marginalized by the closure of Good Samaritan Hospital. And we didn't have the support we really needed from other churches and other congregations because they felt it was a moot point and Premier was going to do what they wanted to do. But we felt strongly that we had to continue to fight, and especially for those, because we have a high rate of infant mortality. We got a lot of elderly and so forth. Most of the people could walk to the hospital. People were born in that hospital. But we lost all of that. And but the fight continues, and we have to fight for access and for equity for our people. We just signed a partnership with First Financial Bank. We've signed an MOU with First Financial Bank to make sure we can have available funding to help, especially those members of our congregation that have small businesses. They provide grants. If we need grant, they can help with financial literacy programs or whatever we need. So that MOU allows us to work directly with First Financial. And we just signed it. And it was in the Dayton Business Journal not too long ago. the MOU we signed with First Financial, West Dayton Caravan Churches. So we want to make sure that there's economic stability in our community. We want to make sure people have access to finances, especially those who need loans who are home buyers, and do everything we can. So we're not looking only as pastors of the spiritual aspect only, but we have a responsibility for both the social and economic as well. So
that's great. Yeah. And certainly, I think right now, particularly in the Dayton area, I know a lot of people are particularly talking about redlining, as there's the Undesign the Red Line exhibit that's going on right now at Dayton Metro Library, and I know we'll be moving around the community. But certainly these inequities are very clear.
It's clear, and I'm glad you brought up redlining, because the West Dayton Caravan of Church is not going to be a part of that in March, and hopefully we're going to have a house at one of our churches, because we had it everywhere else but in West Dayton. And so now we work, I believe, Christina Scott, to make sure we have that happen. And thanks to Key Bank for helping to sponsor, so we're able to sponsor that and have it on the west side. So we're working at that as well. Mm-hmm.
That's great, and I'm glad that you'll be able to host it. It's an amazing exhibit, and really highlights a historical part of our community that still is very ever present, to this day.
I mean, it's like night and day. I mean, you can just driving down the corridor of Salem Avenue or Gettysburg, and just seeing all the the disinvestment and the boarded up buildings and so forth, potholes. I've changed 4 tires on my car, messing them up in potholes. But then you go just a mile away, and it's a different world. Whether you go south or north, it's a different world. And you can see the disparities. And those are the kinds of things that we are fighting against. Want to make sure there is access and equity in our community. But the folks are marginalized, and we had a lot of stuff to deal with, and but we have to reach our people. And one of the greatest challenges we're facing is the young people right now. Try to get them in line and working with them, and because they have they don't have time to wait for all this stuff. They're moving ahead. So we got to get them engaged and spend a lot of time to get them engaged. But we continue to be in the forefront to fight for justice and equity, and also to save souls. I mean, that's what we're called to do.
So we are, doing this interview as part of a series highlighting our Humanitarian Award recipients, and we're very excited this year to honor the West Dayton Caravan of Churches. I wanted to ask you, these are the Humanitarian Awards. What does it mean to you to be a humanitarian? When I became a priest, some almost 30 years ago, when I was in seminary, I said, Lord, whatever you lead, I will follow. And I didn't know where I was going to end up, but I was always open to wherever God would send me to serve. I started off in rural Virginia, of all places,
right on the Rappahannock River, forming the minds of young students for 4 years after seminary. And I remember when I first arrived, I was introduced to the local sheriff, and they interviewed me for the local paper because I was the first African American professional to come in that town, and they want to make sure to let people know I'm supposed to be there. Because those are the kinds of things we had to go through, and it was quite an experience. But I spent 4 years forming the minds of young students, and fought to get African American students into school and to get African American faculties in that school as well. And we were able to do that. I was very disappointed when I went back for my students invited me back for their reunion, and there was only one Black faculty member left, and so I was disappointed because all the work we did, it was not sustained because they had a new headmaster came in and everything changed and went back to the way it used to be. So that was very frustrating and disappointing. But it's not easy work. It's a lot of work. And but I left from there and I got called to a mixed congregation in Columbus, Georgia, in the Diocese of Atlanta, of all places. I left Virginia, got called there, and served there for 6 years. And when I first arrived, I was the first Black priest in that church. They only had white priests, and there was concern whether the church was going to turn all Black because they were calling a Black priest, but it never happened. It kept the integrity, and we were able to continue on. While I was there, I was able to get involved in building 48 units for senior citizens. We built houses for senior citizens, built a Montessori school, and we fought for a community called Bellwood, which was the working poor. And we had to go against the city it was a combined government, and Columbus consolidated government fought against the city because they were taking community Black grant funds away from the LMI communities to give it to Total System, a major corporation. And we fought against that and got all the money back. But we worked with the city, and the residents in the city worked together to come together with a comprehensive plan for revitalization. And I became a model for the city. And so the Bellwood community benefited from that. But we went through a lot to get to that point. Finally, we sat down and worked it out. And to have the first president, we became incorporated, and the first president was a single grandmother from the community. They were concerned whether we were going to stay. So people always come and promise, but nothing happens. We say we're here to stay. We're not here to tell you, what to do. We have to work along with you to see exactly what you need to accomplish, and we were able to do that. And then I got called here to Ohio, and I've been here 21 years, and got here in 2000 and purchased the land, and as I said earlier, and been here ever since. And so, but I have wherever I went, I had to serve because I said, Lord, wherever you lead, I will follow, and I have been able to serve in every community.
So I think what stands out the most to me, and my impression would be to listeners as well, is just the responsibility that you have to the community, or that you feel to the community, and in that every place that you had listed that you have been, these projects that you were able to accomplish successfully that ultimately changed people's lives. Whether that was those students who went through the school and could see faculty who looked like them, the people who had now affordable housing, moving into Dayton with the tremendous work that you're doing here. And I guess what I want to ask kind of as one of my last questions is, why do you do the work that you do? When you get up each day, what is it that drives you to continue to do more for the community?
I've learned it, and I had to learn the hard way a long time ago that I wasn't in charge. God is. And so I get up in the morning, get my marching orders and say, Lord, what would you have me do today? And I want to be able to touch a life. One of the things that we have done since the pandemic, we establish a prayer line, and we have people calling from different states. And it's 7 days a week, nonstop since the pandemic. Every day at 12 o'clock, we have a prayer line. and praying for people. I have a list here. 6 pages of names of people that we pray for every day, and we add names and take names off. When people pass away, we take the name off, but we pray every day, and I call every single names on that list every day, and names that call in, and as I said, they call from Dallas, Texas, from here in Ohio, and other places as well, just to get on the prayer line. And so we pray, we just pray for people every day. So I get my marching orders every day and say, Lord, what would you have me do? And the funny thing about it is, it was not my goal to be a priest. I started off in pre-med, but as God we have it, I ended up changing my major when I was at school in North Carolina. And then went into advertising and marketing, and believe it or not, it was in advertising and marketing. I had AMS Incorporated that worked there, but I never left the church. I was always involved in church until the rector of the parish, Father George Hale. In fact, he wrote a book, and it was called Before I Forget, and he dedicated 2 pages to me in the book. He was the one who encouraged me to say, this is what you're called to do. Because I was training, I was an acolyte growing up. So I was training acolyte. I was reading. I was a lay reader in the church. But it was a predominantly white congregation, Episcopal church, that I stumbled upon. I got into the church one Sunday, and I was the only person of color in that church. And believe it or not, and the church became integrated. Again, it had 2 schools, and I began to recruit students to go to the schools there. But he was the one who said, this is what you're called to do. And he encouraged me to go to seminary. And so I came to St. Timothy's in Raleigh, North Carolina, to go to seminary. And he talked about my journey in the book he wrote, to where I am today. So.
That's great. Well, I have one final question for you. And that would be, what advice would you have for individuals or young people who are looking to get started in their journey of social change and advocating for others?
I think it's important for them to understand that it's not too much about you. It is, in this world, you can't allow yourself to be selfish and self-centered. Always put the needs of others before your own. And doors were open for you. Things will happen for you. And it's not about money. If you're only in it for money, you're going on the wrong path. And some people have, their reasons for going into it. But always see, and you have to have eyes to see and ears to hear. See what you can do to touch the life of someone. If you can change someone's life each and every day, even just is a common word of encouragement to give to someone else. And stay focused, study, read, appreciate people and culture. Look around you and give thanks to God for just the very life you have, the breath you have. For being alive today is a brand new day, but life is like a roller coaster. It goes up and down. There are times when things are going to be good, and sometimes they're going to be very difficult. We all have challenges. Nothing is smooth for us, but you remain constant and place your faith and trust in God. And yes, He will see you through in all of your challenges and your trials, and you will be successful. As long as you keep your eyes focused on what it is you're called to do, and be committed to that. But make sure that it's not all about you, but what you can do to change the lives of others. So,
Well, great. Well, those were the questions that I have today. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I appreciate this honor, and it came as a surprise because I wasn't looking, and surprised to get it. So I really appreciate it, and I will share this with my colleagues in the West Dayton Caravan of churches in my parish here at St. Margaret's that have been very supportive in everything we've done together. They're hard workers, and we've sustained a lot of losses to death over the years, but we're still here. St. Margaret's was established in 1892, 129 years old as a church. It came right from Christ Church downtown, with a mission from Christ Church downtown, Dayton. So, and here we are today. still going strong and trying to do God's work the best we can. We make mistakes, but we pick up and brush up and keep going. So,
Well, great. Well, I really appreciate your time today.
thank you.
Join us next week on Friendship Friday as we interview our next Humanitarian Award recipient. In the meantime, visit our website, www.nccjgreaterdayton.org/dinner to learn more about our 44th annual Friendship event or to register for the event for free.